that was played a lot in Moscow and St. Petersburg, and we went to Moscow and St. Petersburg when I made myself and my son, who was about 16 at the time, in 2011. And I made a piece of work, this time in St. Petersburg rather than Moscow, and this is what it was. We went to where the Tsar of all the Russias, the last Tsar, was buried in St. Petersburg. His body had been found a few years beforehand with that of his family, and they were interred in a church in St. Petersburg, the Peter and Paul Church. And there were crowds around when we went to look around there, and I didn't know what to photograph, but then my son George nudged my elbow. I said, "What are you doing, nudging my elbow when I'm taking a photograph?" He says, "No, Dad, you want to use the video camera. There's your picture." And there I could see this woman, and she was explaining to a group of tourists, Spanish tourists, what had taken place when the Tsar was murdered and his family, which was a terrible thing, in Ekaterinburg. And but the thing was that she was explaining it in deaf and dumb language, because she had a deaf and dumb group, and her expressions and everything were absolutely amazing, the way that she explained the terrible things that had taken place. And so I videotaped this, and then I took stills from the image, and I made this, and I got back, which was like the Russian cross. And there she is. There you see right at the bottom there. But then all the stills of her gesticulating right up to the top of the cross, explaining in graphic terms, visual terms, what had taken place, which is much better than words could express. It's interesting, I put it in the cross sign because one of the things about the Russian Tsars is that there aren't many heads of government who are saints, but in the Russian Orthodox religion, the Tsar was de facto a saint. And that's why I thought I'd put this whole thing together, which I called, as you forgive the pun, Signs of the Cross. That's about 10 foot high. I showed it at my gallery in the West End. The tune I've just played was actually called God Save the Tsar, and of course they stopped singing it in 1917 after God didn't save the Tsar and his family. When it looked as though his end was nigh, he tried to escape to Britain, but the government at the time, in 1917, advised King George V not to accept him, even though he was his cousin, because they thought it might import revolutionary ideas to Britain, which is the last thing it needed when it had its back to the wall, fighting the First World War. So I'm afraid that was the end of the Tsar and his family in brutal circumstances, and the beginning of the Soviet Union.